Namaste everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Anil Mehta. I have known Anil Mehta for a long time. He is one of the Guru Bandhus with Pandit Suman Ghosh. We have been learning Hindustani classical music from him from several years. I also know him through, we both are followers of Swami Chinmayananda, and we both are members of Chinmay Mission of Houston. So when Pandit Suman Ghosh told us about Anilji writing a book on history, I was pleasantly surprised because knowing Anilji, he's an engineer, a chemical engineer, a graduate of IIT Kharagpur, and he's an MS in engineering from UT Austin. So I failed to connect him with history, and he also has some patents in his name. So after a very successful career, he decided to take retirement in 2018 and pursue his passion about history. He was interested in history from his childhood, and he did research, and he wrote a book, The History and Chronology of Ancient India, Undoing Distortions from Colonial Rule. It is a very interesting book about history of India. When I was growing up, I only learned about Babur, Akbar, Humayun, but I never learned much about our own heritage. And he has really researched and found how our history was distorted, and he has come up with a proper chronology about our history. So it's an interesting book, and he's here to present the book. And he has, I think you said it on Amazon. The book is available. Yeah. So he will give you the details to get the book, and let's enjoy his talk now.
Sorry, finally I had to go to the old technology. Going back to the history, it's always the hardwire that works better. Yeah, that's it.
Namaste. Thank you, Baluji, for the very kind introduction. More than I deserve. And thank you, entire the Woodlands, Hindu Temple of Woodlands Senior Forum, for giving me this opportunity, your precious time to listen to me. I really appreciate it. I again thank Beluji and Jaganji for connecting me with this forum. Also, I thank Vasuji and Rajeshji for facilitating. So I'm looking forward to this, and hope you like what I am going to share with you. As you can see, it's about the presentation is about the history of ancient India, and it's really more on the chronology, the timeline. So the timeline is a backbone of true history. You know, if you don't have the timeline right, the history is going to be entirely very questionable. And by ancient, I mean all the way from the ancient-most time up to 1192, call it about 1200 AD. 1192 is when Delhi fell to Muhammad Sabad Ghori, and Prithviraj Chauhan was defeated. So that is a very cut-off date I chosen. After that date, there is no problem with the timeline or the history. You know, there may be other debates about that, but as far as the timeline is concerned, there are no issues about that. So all the issues we have with the timeline are before that time. So 3100 BC plus to 1200 AD, almost 4300 years that we are talking about, and we have a serious issue with the timeline. So go to the next one. So this is my quick outline of what I'll be talking about. So why this book? You want to know? I kind of gave a little bit of idea about that. We'll talk about Panchanga and calendars, numerous calendars, and then talk about what kind of distortions, when they happened, why they happened. We'll go show you some sample of extensive genealogies that we have, Vanshavalis in Sanskrit or Indian. Talk about Mahabharata war a little bit, also Adi Shankaracharya's true date. Also, there are a couple very important historical personalities, Vikramaditya and Shalivahana, and then a very quick glance at the book's contents. So, why this book? There is a glaring contradiction that we have in the history. We all know about the Indus Valley civilization. We all have heard about it, I'm sure. So, India is acknowledged as one of the 4 oldest ancient civilizations, along with Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China. Now, when you look at it, Egypt's earliest kings are dated to 3100 BC, which matches with the archaeological evidence. Earliest Mesopotamian states are dated to about 3000 to 2500 BC, which is fairly close to the what the currently known ancient civilization timeline. Then earliest rulers in China are dated to about 1523 or 1751 BC. Okay. Then you come to India. The earliest kingdom in India is dated to 600 BC. Although we have been told that we have the archaeological evidence from 3100 around that time BC. But if you look at earliest personality in India, that's been dated is Gautam Buddha and Mahavir Swami. Mahavir Swami at 599 BC is birth date, and Gautam Buddha 563 BC as the currently taught date. So the question arises, we have evidence for 3100 plus BC, but our first person, known person, is dated only to 600 BC. So what happened in between? Who were? Who was there? Who was ruling? Who were these people? So we were told in between that, okay, and Aryans came in and all that, but anyway, we'll see what really happened. So one key point that I want to make here is that this history and chronology, the timeline that we all have been taught, and it is still being taught all over the world, including India, is the history and chronology written during the British time, British rule of India. It is not the history that was recorded by Indians, but very few of us know this. What has been done is that 5100 years of India's chronology or timeline was shrunk to about 2500 years, 2600 years. 600 basis or 2600 years. Sri Ram and Sri Krishna and Mahabharata and Ramayana, there were no questions about the historicity before the British started rewriting history. They all have been turned into mythology. There is evidence available, and I'll show some of the evidence to prove the historicity. Bhagavad Gita's age has been cut from 5100 years to 2100 years. 2100 years I say because if you do any Google search, you will see Bhagavad Gita composed in 1st century BC, as opposed to the 31st century BC or 32nd century BC. And these distortions remain even after 77 years of India's independence. And the sad part is that very few people are aware that this is a distorted history. So we'll take a look at it in a little more detail now. So I'm not the first person here, really. Some great historians have spent their lifetime, devoted their lifetime. So what I have done is simply learn what they did, try to verify as much as I could, and then I have integrated their work with whatever subsequent research available, and with some refinement. 90% of the chronology that I've given is from these people. Only maybe 5-10% is my refinement, to fix some issues. So the 4 great people and many other, but T.S. Narayan Sastry, he published his first book in 1916. Unfortunately, he had he passed away soon after that. He had a plan to publish a whole series of history books. Then M. Krishnamacharya, he published a volume in 1937. Pandit Kota Venkatachalam, he devoted nearly 40 years of his life, say his entire life, in establishing the true chronology of India. And much of my work is highly influenced by Pandit Kota Venkatachalam's work. You will see extensive references of his work in my book. K.D. Setna published his book in 1989, Ancient India in a New Light, and that book helped me answer some of the questions that were not answered by the first three writers. And then, so this book is nothing but just bringing out the past work and let people know that we have some great historical work that has been done over the last more than 100 years. And I'm just simply a messenger bringing out all this work that has been forgotten. So this is the dedication page of my book, and this is somewhat unique. You will see that I use several calendars in expressing the date of publication of this book or the dedication. So I'm starting with the oldest existing calendar is Kali Yuga Shaka. Now, most of us might think that Kali Yuga is a very mythological, it's a Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, etc. But Kali Yuga is a continuing calendar, and this was last year, 5126. Current Kali Yuga year is 5127. So you will have to add up, 1 year to all that. There's also another ancient calendar that is still being used. It is the Kashmir Abda, or it's a Laukik Abda, or it's called Saptarshi Samvat. Some of you may have heard of this Saptarshi Samvat. At least the Kashmiri Hindus may know about it. And 100 years ago, almost all Kashmiri Hindus knew about this. Then we have Vikram Samvat, which is a very vibrant calendar right now. All our festivals are based on Vikram Samvat. All festivals, Holi, Deepavali, whatever you name it. So there are two versions of Vikram Samvat. The North Indian, which starts in Chaitra Mas, so about in April or so. And then there's a Gujarati version which is 7 months behind. That's all, for whatever reason. That starts after Diwali. So that's why it's 81-80. So current year is 82 and 81. And then we have another calendar also, Shalivansaka. Shalivansaka is actually India's national calendar. Most of you might not be aware of this. Yeah, I wasn't too until I did this research. In fact, you will see Shalivansaka date on India's officials' memos. I want to show you the calendar or the Panchang. So you'll see, my apologies to those who cannot read Devanagari. This is written in Devanagari. You will see the Shalivansaka. So this is a 32 years old Panchang. Shalivansaka highlighted in, say it's 1915 there, I believe. Yeah. Then Vikram Samvat 2049-50. What I want to show you is then on the left-hand side, the third line in small letters, Kali Yuga Shake, 5095. This is a 32 years old calendar. So you have to add 32 years to all of that and you get the current year. So this is, so Indians have been tracking Kali Yuga ever since for 5,000 plus years. This is a chart of, India has a long history. It's a very big area, very big country. So many calendars have been in use, and these are only just some of the more better known calendars. In fact, there are probably a dozen more calendars that are not on this list. So the oldest calendar that was being used until about 2,000 years ago is Yudhishthira Shaka, calendar called Yudhishthira Shaka. So it got used for 3,000 years. Then I mentioned then Kali Yuga, which is being used even now, Saptarshi Shaka, which also is being used now. And then there is a Yudhishthira Shaka of Jains, which again is not being used now. And then we come down all the way to, there is a calendar called Marwa, the Ganashaka, started in 725 BC, not being used now. There is a Shaka Kala, this is Persian, Shaka Kala, 550 BC. Then there's another Sriharsa Samvat, 457 BC. Then there's a Gupta calendar, Gupta Yuga, Gupta Kala, 327 BC. And then the last two calendars I've already mentioned, Vikram Samvat and Shaliyavan Shaka. So, you might ask, how do we know about the Yudhishthira Shaka? So there is in fact at least a couple of evidence that I'll share with you. Inscription, there was an inscription dated in Yudhishthira Shaka 168, and this is found in the reference. This is in 1807 reference. So anyone, so these references are given in my book, and anyone can check. The Acharya lineage, the Shankaracharya parampara of the Dwarka Math used to be recorded in Yudhishthira Shaka until the Vikram Samvat started in 2081 years ago. Okay, so first 500 years are recorded in Yudhishthira Shaka and then Vikram Samvat. And by the way, I have been to Dwarka Matha, and they on their wall have this available to see. Also, there is a book available from Dwarka Matha there that also they have this entire record. Now, evidence for Kali Yuga Shaka. So again, an inscription dated Kali Yuga 600. So we have at least evidence from going back to 600. Okay, and this is, so that is almost 4,500 years ago. Then, there are many dates starting from Kali Yuga 1234 recorded in Nepal Rajvamshavali, the Nepal Royal Genealogy, Rajvamshavali. So 1234, I'll show you some of that too. Adi Shankar's birth date has been recorded in Kali Yuga 2593. So 2,500 years ago, as opposed to 1,200 years ago, which we've been taught. Vikramaditya's birth has been recorded in Kali Yuga 3001 in Bhavishya Mahapurana. Kalidasa states his date 3068, Kali Yuga completed, and is one of his compositions, Jyoti Vidabharan. Bhaskaracharya has stated his date, Kali Yuga 3180, when he talked about the destruction of the Sakati. Aryabhatta has recorded his date in Kali Yuga 3600. There is Aihon inscription in Karnataka, which states Kali Yuga 3735, that's when the inscription was made. These are some examples of the dates recorded in Nepal, Rajvamshavali. So, not the top one, but if you look at from the middle there, so Pasupreksha Pashupati Temple, Kali Yuga 1234, then Kali Yuga 1389, then Kali Yuga 2800, Kali Yuga 3000, and then Vikram Samvat started, and after that Viridevan Kali Yuga 3400, Kali Yuga 3600, 3800, 38. Kali Yuga has been used extensively in Nepal, Rajvamshavali to record the dates. We have momentous evidence from ancient Greek historians. Many of you might have heard of Megasthenes, who was Greek ambassador in India during a king, and there is a big, I won't mention the name yet until the time comes. So, but Alexander's historians noted that from the days of Alexander, at that time, India had a record of 6,451 years and 3 months, and 154 kings. When you add 326 BC, which is the date of Alexander's invasion, to 6451, you get 77 BC. So, when somebody tells you that we have 6,451 years and 3 months, That counting is possible only with a calendar. If you don't have a calendar, there is no way, it's impossible to count that many years. So there's another evidence. So we have one evidence that is for the 67-77 BC, starting of calendar. At least there may have been even more calendars, even older calendars before that. We don't know. In fact, there is some literature about that too. We have another evidence for this, and that is a book written by Alexander Cunningham on Indian eras. The title of the book is Indian Eras, Book of Indian Eras. And there also, he mentions the same date, 67-77 BC. That is the start of the Saptarshi Samvat, which is the Kashmir, the Saptarshi Samvat that we have, that actually started in 67-77 BC. So we have 9,000 years of history here. So now I've come to the chronology distortions after having shown you the evidence for our calendars. If you look at the left-hand side, that's a true chronology, true timeline, and the right-hand side is the false timeline. So the Mahabharata and Kali Yuga, all that have been essentially ignored, and Mahabharata called myth. If you look at then the next item is Gautam Buddha's date. So Gautam Buddha's date we are taught is 563 BC. Actually 1887 to 1807 BC. Maybe there may be a few years more plus minus, there may be a little bit of debate on that, but essentially 19th century BC for Gautam Buddha, that's his true date. And then we have Chandragupta Maurya, which we are told is 4th century BC. His date is actually 16th century BC, 1534 BC, just Chandragupta Maurya's date. So Chandragupta Maurya and Chanakya were not present in Alexander during Alexander's time. They lived 1200 years before that. Then we have Ashoka. Obviously, Ashoka is related to Chandragupta Maurya, his grandson. Okay, so he is in 1400, and then we have Kanishka in 1200 BC. And then we come down to Shankaracharya, as I mentioned earlier. Shankaracharya is 509 BC, that's his date. So it's 2500 years ago, as opposed to the 1200 years ago or 788 AD that we have been told or being taught. And then Gupta. So it was the Chandragupta Gupta, who was the contemporary of Alexander. When Alexander invaded India, it was Chandragupta Gupta, not Chandragupta Maurya. We'll talk more about that. Then some other people, so Vikramaditya and Salivan have been just taken out of history. They have been called myths. So, when, why, and how this false history started? Bengal fell in 1757 to East India Company. In 1784, William Jones founded the Asiatic Society in Calcutta in 1784. Only Europeans were allowed to be members of this society until 1829. That is nearly 45 years. William Jones dismissed the so William Jones heard about the high antiquity of India's history, chronology starting from 1300 BC, the genealogy. He dismissed that. He said, I don't believe it. Because he believed in the biblical version of the world history. That is, the world didn't exist before 4006 BC. World came into existence in 4006 BC, that is 6,000 years ago. And I'll show you the evidence for that. Because of that belief, and then, so you might still say that 3100 is still less than 4,000. Well, there are other things that have to be explained, floods and Noah and whatnot. So he dismissed the 5,000 years of India's history and started tampering with it. He believed the Greek chronology starting at 600 BC to be the oldest in the world, per his knowledge and per Europeans' knowledge. So this is the table from William Jones's paper, 1799. more than 200 plus years old, on the Asiatic Researches volume. This is the table taken from his paper. So he had this information. You can see the chronological record here, starting from about 1300 BC, and with the name of Jarasandha, which we have been taught to be a mythical character. Now is himself mentioned this over here. And then, so first is the Gupta Dynasty, and then the Perpetuate Dynasty, and then the Shishunag Dynasty, and then there's a Nanda Dynasty, and then there's Maurya Dynasty, there's a Singha Dynasty, Karma Dynasty, Andhra Dynasty, and the Gupta is not shown there. So this is the chronology information that William Jones had. But he didn't believe that. So he started tampering with it. So the table on the left shows that. You can see the name first, Abhimanyu, son of Arjuna. So that is, Jarasandha and they're all contemporaries, Abhimanyu, Arjuna, that's Mahabharata time. So he brought the Mahabharata time down from 3100 BC to 2000 BC. Pradyota and the Buddha 1000 BC. We are taught 563 BC. That's his first attempt, 1000 BC. Then Nanda and Aryan. Then Vikramaditya is still historical in his opinion, for his knowledge, 56 BC. Now, again from the same paper, all these tables are from the same paper. Now you look at the table on the right hand side. This is the table again constructed by William Jones, both these tables. So on the left hand side, it's Adam, Noah, deluge, etc. And on the right post is the year from 1788 of our era. So our era means, according to the Christian belief, the biblical belief, when the world started in 4006 BC. So if you do 594 years before 1788, that's 4006 BC. Okay. So he puts starting of the world with Adam in 4006 BC, and then he's trying to fit the Hindu or Indian chronology into that time frame. So he puts Manu at 4006 BC, and then age 1 is the Satya Yuga. They call it age 1, age 2, age 3, age 4. So then you can look at Noah in about, that's at 3000 BC. And then Noah supposedly ruled for 950 years, so Noah's date is all the way down there. So you can, and then there's deluge, that the floods happened in about 2350 BC according to the biblical chronology. So you can see that, and then Buddha is put about 2000 BC there, in the middle there. And then Nanda and Vikramaditya, and we also put Rama there too. You can see Rama in Treta Yuga, age 3, Rama there too. And then age 4, that's a Kali Yuga, after, starting from Buddha. So this, you can see, so the main reason for having this chronology that we have is it has been fitted into the biblical version of the world history. And can you believe it? People will laugh at this, but this was the common belief in the 18th, 19th century Europe. And sadly, still, we are learning our chronology based on this. It's high time to change it. Unfortunately, our great historians, or many of the great historians, somehow don't know about it or don't know. So now we come to this Chandragupta. How that fitting into the biblical version was justified and how it was handled. Megasthenes and ancient Greek historians have mentioned a king called Chandragupta. So when Alexander invaded India in 326 BC, they mentioned a king called Chandragupta. And then William Jones proposed that this Chandragupta was Chandragupta Maurya. And he was partially right that it was Chandragupta, but not Maurya. Chandragupta Gupta, or the Gupta Dynasty, the Chandragupta I or the Gupta Dynasty. Gupta Dynasty also has Chandragupta II, which was the grandson of Chandragupta I. So, by equating Chandragupta Maurya to Chandragupta, or to Alex, so assuming Chandragupta to be Chandragupta Maurya, he moved Chandragupta Maurya from 1500 plus BC to 300 BC. So 1200 years of India's history gone out the window. Then everything else, since Chandragupta Maurya is now in 300 BC and Gautam Buddha was a few hundred years before him, and then Ashoka was grandson of Chandragupta Maurya. So now everything in Indian chronology is fitted around that new timeline, new basis of Chandragupta Maurya being in 300 BC instead of 1500 BC. So when you shrink this chronology, what happens then? You have taken out 1200 years, but the people so. Now how do you fit people, all these people, Vikramaditya, Shalivahana, there's no room for them. They are taken out. Similarly, once this was done with the Magad's chronology, same thing then was done with the Kashmir's chronology and Nepal's chronology, because they all have to come in line. They have to match with each other. When this happened, nothing in India's Puranas, nothing in the Puranas match with the chronology now, the new basis of chronology. So what they say? Oh, Puranas are unreliable. They don't support, our new historical understanding. And they proceeded to edit the Puranas. Here is one example. There are many examples of Puranas being edited. This is again from the book by one of the colonial historian, he published his book in 1930. The title of his book is The Purana Text of the Dynasties of Kali Age. So you see the original verse and altered verse in the transliteration, and the same verse is given both altered and original in the Devanagari. Without going into the meaning of the verse, there's few things that I would like to point out is that the original verse has the Saptar Shayas Tada Pramshuhu Pradiptena. So here the focus of Pradiptena, the shining bright, Pradiptena, Dipta, Pradiptena. Instead of Pradiptena, the altered verse has Pratipe. Pratipe instead of Pradipte. There are other changes also. Why Pratipe? Pratipe was Shantanu's father. Who was Shantanu? Vishwa's father. So, this way, in this verse is essentially talking about from the time of the Mahabharata to certain time. So instead of time of the Mahabharata, is now talking about from the time of Pratipa. That is 4 more generations is including in the same timeline. Again, trying to shrink the timeline. So, end result was this. The first column has the true chronology given in the Puranas, and the second chronology is what the colonial historians came up with. So first 2 dynasties are gone. That is 1200 plus years of history gone. Then the subsequent dynasties, the same, you can see, the same, the sequence has been maintained. Well, how did they find out about all these things, if they didn't use the Puranas? Obviously, they did use the Puranas, and that's why they had to edit the Puranas. But they cherry-picked the information, they cut down the time durations as they felt justified. So from 1300 BC, ultimately we ended up with 600 BC as the starting of a chronology. And then there are gaps in between too. Even the Gupta Dynasty has been cut down, Andhra Dynasty has been cut down, all the subsequent dynasties have been cut down. So, I kind of already gave some idea about the sources of our true history and chronology. Puranas are the primary sources of our history and chronology. And not all Puranas, there are 18 major Puranas, but the 5 Puranas, Matsya, Vishnu, Vai, Brahmanda, Bhagavata, and Bhageshwar, there are 6 Puranas. They have the chronological information, genealogical information, the sequence of the kings, and who ruled for how long. So, colonial Indologists use the Puranas, but they cherry-pick the information. They arbitrarily shorten some other times. Now, Puranas is not the only one. There's another source that is called Kali Yuga which this book is not to be found anymore, because this was one of the most authentic book on India's chronology, it had to be destroyed. How do we know about it? It has been extensively referenced in some of the works that I mentioned, T.S. Narayan Shastri's work, Pandit Kottavakatachalam's work, Krishnamacharya's work. That's how we know that such a book existed at one time. Raj Tarangini, that is the history of Kashmir. Raj Tarangini narrates 5,000 plus years of history of Kashmir. And then stops at about 1148 when the person who wrote the Raj Tarangini. We have Nepal Rajvanshawali, I mentioned 5,000 years of genealogy, chronology given there. And I have more information in chapter 3 of my book for that. So here's an example of genealogy, the Vanshawali. This is just one example. We have extensive genealogy. What I want to mention is here that number 7, there are 5 sons of Yadu. From Yadu we get Yadavs in India. Sri Krishna was a descendant of Yadu. 50 generations later. Turvasu, from whom the word Turusk, his descendants are called Turusk, and probably Turkish people coming from him. Druyu, some Druids people believed to be from Druyu. Kuru, the entire dynasty Kuru and Pandava, they are from Kuru. And then Anu, the eastern kings, we will go about that. Now, some other, you can see Dushyanta and Shakuntala, we all have heard of. Their son Bharat. After that, 3 generations later, Hasti, that's who founded Hastinapur. After that, then Kuru, and we'll go to and Pandavas are from Kuru dynasty. And then we have another branch, appendix to so it's not here, another branch that leads to Draupadi, another branch that leads to Eastern Kings. So we have many branches from this. Starting from Kuru then, there's again 2 branches. In fact, 3 branches. So left hand side, come down all the way to then you see the Pratipe and Shantanu and Dhritarashtra Pandu. On the right hand side, you have Chedi, and Magad. Chedi is in Madhya Pradesh. And that Magad kings, and so then we have at number 7, Dhruvatara is the first king of Magadha that we see in the Puranas. And then you have the list coming down, the genealogy coming down, the Jarasandha. And that's so we have 50 generations right here shown in this, and many branches coming from this. A little bit about Mahabharata war. This is a pivotal event in India's history, and all this chronological record starts from Mahabharata, afterwards, with the number of years and etc. Before that, we have the genealogies, but we don't have the time durations. We don't have, so that we cannot say precisely that, okay, this king happened in such and such time. Okay, but we can estimate sort of. And this Mahabharata is at least three independent literature sources vouch this. I mentioned Puranas, and of course Mahabharata is there. Raj Tarangini, which is an independent source, not related to Puranas, and then Nepal Rajvanshawali. 3 sources mention this. Then we have numerous books on dating of the war. There's also astronomical positions are mentioned in India's literature, and you can use those, you can date those astronomical positions when they existed. I mentioned about the inscription in Karnataka, Aihole inscription, so that's a picture of the Aihole inscription, written in AD 634 by the King Pulakeshin, who registered Harshvardhan's advance into the south. And here is a Google map of the Rajgir or ancient Girivraj. Mahabharata mentions the Girivraj surrounded by 5 mountains, and you can see 5 mountains surrounding Girivraj. This is a quick overview of some major archaeological sites of India. There are thousands and thousands of archaeological sites, but I'm just showing you some major ones. You can see some of them date to, like Vedga dates to 7000 BC up in the far left. Harappa, of course, 3000 BC, Mohenjo-daro 3200 BC. On the far right, Lahora, they were 6500 BC. Rakhigarhi, we have 6000 BC. Rakhigarhi is a more recent. Rakhigarhi, Sonali, Bidana, these are the more recent excavations of the last 20-30 years. And Rakhigarhi happens to be the biggest site in Asia, archaeological site in Asia. And it is not fully excavated yet. There is one you might, at the bottom, the Gulf of Khambat, I mentioned 16,800 BC. There is no typo, there is 16,800 BC. We know the water levels has risen. So if you go back to 10,000 years ago, water level was more than 100 meters lower. So in fact, the Gulf of Cambay or Khambat didn't exist then. And this is a map from the ASI, the Archaeological Survey of India's Dholavira site. So you can see the majority of the sites are on the Saraswati and one below Sindhu. Saraswati River, you can see, and Saraswati River has been mapped by satellite photography, and the dry bed is still existing, at least in some places it's visible, and it is a seasonal river, but probably it's what's likely is that as Earth warmed up, at 11,000 BC and the glaciers were melting, as the ice age was ending. And at some point, probably there was no more ice to be melted, at least from those places, or not enough. So Saraswati River dried up in about 1900 BC. So really, people then started probably moving from there.
Can you show it by your finger? There it is. So this is the Saraswati River. It went to Gulf of Kutch. Yeah, this is Sindhu. And this is Saraswati. So Saraswati started from about very close to the place from Jamuna. It is actually said that Jamuna at one time met Saraswati, and then and geological changes happened. So Jamuna has changed paths several times, and right now it's Ganga, but at one time it even Satluj also, which is Satluj also met Saraswati at one time. This is the geological information saying. So that's another reason why Saraswati dried up. So these are the pictures I have taken when I visited the sites. Lothal, which is only 85 kilometers southwest of Ahmedabad. So 2800 BC, that's a lock gate. That is for it was a port. So lock gate for the ports to come in. Then Dholavira site in Kutch. This is just a section of the water harvesting system there. By the way, the name Kutch actually, I have a friend who's done a master's in Sanskrit, my classmate. He said Kutch means marshland, delta. I think that kind of make you think a little bit about. So Kutch was probably a delta of Saraswati at that time. Now, Indus Valley script and comparison of Indus Valley and Brahmi script, at least some characters, quite a bit of similarity. And in fact, recently, some of you may have heard of the this deciphering of the script by Yajnadevam. Just it has happened a few months ago only. Actually, he did it during the COVID time as his hobby, and he's deciphered, and he's done a very scientific decipherment, not like guess this and guess that. He went about it very methodically. You might go through his presentation. It's available on YouTube. So we can see that the Brahmi script, which was the ancient India script, can be seen as coming from the Indus Valley or Sindhu Saraswati Valley, establishing continuity of the civilization. So now what happened is, because of this comparison mistake of Sandra Kotas, Chandragupta Maurya's false dating, Ashokan inscriptions got dated to, extensive Ashokan inscriptions all over India. All those inscriptions got dated to
200 BC, 200 plus BC, I mean it's 3rd century BC, instead of 15th century BC. So true dating of Brahmi script is 15th century BC, not 3rd century BC. And then what happened is, now they look at some other script. Oh, so if it looks similar to that Brahmi, oh, this is 3rd century BC. So you see now one false is leading to another false. This is how they did, based on the scripts. I mentioned about the Shankaracharya's about the date, but there is extensive evidence. So I mentioned Dwarka Mutt, also Kanchi Kamkoti Mutt and Jagannath Puri Mutt. All these 3 matters have the 2500 years of chronological information. Then we also have Kumaril Bhatta, I think your Mandan Mishra, debate of Shankaracharya with Mandan Mishra. Mandan Mishra was a disciple of Kumaril Bhatta. Kumaril Bhatta was he was a contemporary of Mahavir Swami. So, we have the connection. So this history connects. The chronology that I'm talking about connects. And then, I won't go into much detail, but by another, so Bhattruhari and the Harsh Vikramaditya. His father was Shankaracharya's teacher, Guru Govindabhai. That was Harsh Vikramaditya's father. So again, the history connects there too. Mention about the Vikramaditya Shalivahana. Vikramaditya was one of the greatest kings of India. In fact, is considered next only to Sri Rama and Sri Krishna in his glory. So that's how great he was. And his calendar still exists widely. And that's corroborated by Nepal Rajvanshawali also, because he went to Nepal and he paid off Nepal's debt and they accepted him as their king, emperor. And he had Navratnas in his court, Kalidasa, Varamihira, which have been dated to like 5th, 6th century BC and all different times. So they all were the Navratnas in his Vikramaditya's court. And then Salivana mentioned that. So, if you want to see I think many of you might have seen this, India's 5,000 years of history in one chart. When I see that chart, it hurts me because it's so wrong. This would be a better chart for that. This is 5,000 years of India's chronology. Hastinapur, Koshala, Magad, Agnivamsas, that is the Vikramaditya and Pramar, and then Kashmir Dynasty all the way. And Kashmir chronology also connects with Sangram Raja, and that is Muhammad Ghani's time also. It connects there too. So that's the essence of my presentation. This is just a quick look at what the book is. So, the first 4 chapters essentially are establishing the foundation of the chronology. And then Hastinapur, historicity of Sri Krishna, extensive evidence given there. Maurya Dynasty, Gautam Buddha, Shankaracharya, more details there. Kings of Kashmir, Patanjali, Varamihira. Chapter 14 on inscriptions and archaeological evidence. And chapter 15, fallacy of the Aryan invasion of India. Summary and conclusion. So this is what I have to say. I forgot to mention that actually questions are welcome at any time, but anyway, if you have a question, please feel free. I'm sorry. Correct. So history is so vast, so of course this history doesn't cover all of India's history. The focus is on the chronology, the timeline. So that's why what I've covered in the book and covered in my research is the things that have gone into determining the chronology. And so there is so much history. In fact, so I'm not able to cover all of it. There's Chola history, Dravidian history, so much out there. But so obviously this is just only some part of India's history essentially.
I have a question. First, this is mind-blowing. First thing is, it's mind-blowing that so much history has been distorted and we are believing in the Western version of the history. So I'd like to congratulate you on such a focused effort to do it. And now my question is more contemporary. How is this chronology being accepted by people in India or the historians in India? Do they all, I know it came from several other volumes, but you have put it in a very clear way. You have also used the history chart that you put up at the end. It's kind of correction to the old version, which was just a short history. So is this being accepted? Are you hearing from people that, this is how, the chronology must be?
You raise an excellent point. This is not going to be an easy task. The way I view this, and I sometimes given this analogy to, I see this as hard as me still hoping to climb Mount Everest. You can be guaranteed that I will never climb Mount Everest in this life. That's how difficult I see. But having said that, what I believe is the key to ultimately getting this accepted officially is making more and more and more people aware of this. Then the public pressure will come on the official people. And so I believe this is the first task is to make people aware of this as widely as possible. And then ultimately it will catch some historians' attention now. As you know, I have been, so I come into contact with a few people, because they come to know of this, and so I've been put in touch with some of these people. So in fact, I'm not the only person with this. Few other people also have tried something similar. I wasn't aware of some of the work. But so all we have, and some of them have a little bit of different version, and so first of all we have to have all agreement on what is the true chronology. But yes, it is going to be difficult task, and it will take some time. But bring awareness to as many people as possible.
Anil, I have a question right here.
Sure.
Yeah. So, as Dholagiri site or the one out towards Pakistan, all of these are carbon dated and proven to be so many thousands years old, right? We have existing Ashoka stupa still, even though thousands of them were constructed, but we have some still available in India. So have the stupas been carbon dated, which would be easier way to show that Ashoka was not 700 years ago, but 1500 or so, what you showed.
So the carbon dating can be done on organic matter. Now the buildings or like Ashokan inscriptions are on the pillars or boulders, those cannot be carbon dated. So the organic matter is the one that can be carbon dated. So, and the problem is that, one of the problems we have is that, most people don't know about this chronological discrepancy. And so when our archaeologists, most of them are not aware of this. And so it blindsides them, in the questioning, and let's go test this now. So if there's some ash maybe or something, some organic matter that can be recovered and carbonated, yes. But first of all, even archaeologists have to be made aware of this discrepancy in chronology.
The truth can be suppressed, but not for too long. You are the part of the movement is going to spread more and more.
Thank you.
This is an excellent body of work. My question is, which authority in India or in the world would change this history, and accept this chronology. I know it is an uphill battle. It is an uphill battle, but there has to be some governing body or looking over Indian history or even in the world archaeology, world history, who will accept this and how we can go about making them aware of it. You are making general people aware of it. That is excellent. They can read this book. But then ultimate goal is we have to rewrite the history and make the world know that we have very ancient history. So how do we go about doing that?
So the official body of Government of India, I believe, is the History Council of India. So ultimately, I think they are the people. But I mean, you raise a very good, valid point that ultimately, make people aware, and then, but ultimately it has to be, the work has to happen at the government level, and so we have to bring this to the attention of government's level. The first copy of my book I presented, and thanks to Pandit Gosti, my Guruji, connected me with the Consul General of India in Houston. So first copy I presented to him, and my hope is that ultimately, that I have opportunity to actually take this up to the higher and higher channel. But ultimately, yes, we have to reach out to the government level for this.
Hello.
Modi would be the right one.
મારો question એવો છે, should I talk in English or Gujarati is fine?
I'm fine with either one.
Okay.
Some people might not know Gujarati.
Yeah, you said that you are going to reach to the higher level, but our kids, like I learn about Mughals and I learn about the Britishers, our kids never learn about our old kings. So we do tell them stories, Ashoka and Vikramaditya, but how could you include their story with this chronology in their textbooks? So they learn how glorious was India before.
Right, so that will happen after when it gets officially accepted. And of course, to get this accepted officially, India is the first target, obviously. India, if it's accepted in India, then the rest of the world will eventually follow it. So this has to be accepted first in India, and so that's the target. Get this made official in India. But somewhat, I'm not saying what I have in this book is all 100% true. There may be some inaccuracies or something to, okay, fine. But let the debate begin and let the actual inquiry start then.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we have one more question. You have a question?
First of all, I applaud you for doing so much research. It's not an easy task. And the other thing is, sir, you have just scratched the surface. There is so much there. And people who think they have never read about these things, like I was a history major in college, that's when I read about a lot of these dynasties and the stories that they say they've never heard. But the main thing, the main goal should be to get Indians in higher places, get aware, they should get the awareness of this. They should know that people are trying to convince the nation or people as to what our historical past has really been instead of what they've been fed or given to drink. So like Modi ji in power, he is trying to do so much for Hinduism. Somehow you should approach that. Those kind of people. Somehow this book needs to get there. People need to know.
So I think I'll do your spiel on your behalf that he has brought some extra copies of the book, and they are for what is the cost to the book?
Actually, I didn't go to this, but those interested in the book, those interested in the book, I got some copies of the book with me. Both there's hardcover version as well as the paperback version, so they are available. And my website is satyampress.com, but that's me only. My website is
Is it available on Amazon? That's one
It
question.
is available on Amazon, but at a much higher, nearly double the price to what I sell it at. So yes, it is available on Amazon. Yeah.
So maybe the change starts with us first. I think we need to read this, digest it, accept it, and maybe then also circulate it to as many people as possible. And then of course expect the concerned authorities to really take care of it eventually into the right place. So any other questions from anyone? Very good. Let's give a big round of applause to Anil Mehta for excellent research, presentation, and thank you for coming all the way from Missouri City, 1.5 hour drive this morning. At least we can promise you good audience and good lunch, okay, after this presentation.
I'm very grateful to this opportunity to share my what's closest to my heart, and thank you for listening to me with attention. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more round of applause.